Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for coming to watch. So I've got guys an update on a very big severe weather event that's going to be taking place here across the United States in the north central United States. We have a lot to talk about on that, but we also do have a big heat wave that is about to run right through the United States, causing big time heat issues to impact over 100 million U.S. citizens. We're also going to be talking about a big tropical threat with a tropical disturbance that has now a high chance of development out in the Gulf of Mexico. I've got all the details coming right up, right? So thank you for joining me here on this Sunday afternoon. I hope you guys are having a great Father's Day out there. I hope you guys, especially those fathers out there, are having a great day. All right, but we have a lot to talk about in this video because we have some active weather coming up. Severe weather has definitely calmed down a little bit, but yesterday we had a very active event with a lot of relatively strong tornadoes out there in Nebraska. We still have, you can see a few isolated showers and thunderstorms with some more severe storms that are expected today. We have a lot of showers and thunderstorms down here on the Gulf Coast, and we're talking about a big tropical threat. So starting out looking at the radar, you can see pretty much, once again, we have showers and thunderstorms up here near the oven mitt of Michigan here in the Great Lakes region. We also do have the beginning of some showers and thunderstorms out there in South Dakota, and then some isolated showers and thunderstorms from really the Gulf Coast up towards the Tennessee Valley, and then all the way up here towards Iowa and Illinois. And it almost looks like to me we could have a little bit of a wind bag starting to form here, meaning just that we're going to have a little segment of very strong winds that are kind of just pushing their way across the region, so please be aware of that. All right, so let's get rocking and rolling here, taking a look at your current alerts. So you can see we'll start out here in the Great Lakes. Noticeably, it's looking like the worst of the heat is definitely going to be localized here along the, around the Great Lakes region, but also in the Northeast. Look at this red shade. This is where you have excessive heat watches, and yes, this is for all of Ohio. This does include portions of western PA. This does include portions of western West Virginia and southern portions of Michigan. Okay, that's in the red shade. Once again, that is definitely an excessive heat watch. Also does include some areas of eastern Indiana. All right, that's for temperatures that could possibly get up to near 100 degrees in some areas. So we're talking about dangerous heat issues for a lot of folks out here along the Great Lakes. You can also see we do have some isolated spots out here in the Northeast, into Connecticut, into portions of into Massachusetts, and even into portions of New Hampshire. We are dealing with excessive heat watches, and this is just all because of this big heat wave with this area of high pressure that's going to be moving in. We already are dealing with some pretty intense heat, and we do, in the orange shade, have heat advisories. This is going out for portions of New Jersey, a lot of New Jersey, most of New Jersey here, and then also portions of southeastern PA. So along the I-95 corridor, we're going to see some very intense heat in the coming days. All right, here in the western United States, we're pretty active. We'll start here in the Dakotas, where we do have some wind advisories, so please be aware of some potentially hazardous conditions because of the very strong winds. All right, you still have some more heat advisories out there into western Texas here, and kind of just the deserty regions of Texas. That does include some counties out here into southern New Mexico. In the pink shade, you've got some red flag warnings out here for the desert southwest. And then you can see we also do have some freeze watches. All right, this is going out for sections of northern Nevada, not only for the mountains, but also for some of the lower elevations. Behind all the warm air, you have a very strong cold front that's blasting through. You can see we even have winter storm watches. Okay, that's going out for portions of western Montana and northern Idaho. So we're dealing with actually some very intense below average temperatures, and the reason why we have severe weather right here in the middle of the country is because that's where the two air masses meet, and because they're so strong, and we have obviously more factors coming into this, and we just get the severe weather. But yes, in the teal shade, you do have freeze watches. In the blue shade up here, this is where you have the winter storm watches, and once again, the pink shade is where you have the red flag warnings. All right, so let's move on here. We're going to take a look at your SPC outlook. This is for today. We have two areas of two slight risk areas. The first one being pretty broad up here into the high plains. This is pretty much starting out from most of central and western Nebraska, kind of going up through southern South Dakota into sections of central Minnesota, and this does include areas of Wisconsin, and it does include the western sections of the UP of Michigan. All right, but definitely watch out for some pretty nasty storms that are about to fire off this region. We're going to talk about that. We're going to all break it down. All right, but that's where you have the slight risk. That's level 2 out of 5 risk. You have a secondary slight risk here just for a little section of northern Illinois, pretty much centered around the Chicago area. So watch out if you're in the Chicago suburbs. Just be aware that there is a real threat for a severe storm or two. I do expect Chicago to be under at least a special weather statement, but perhaps a severe thunderstorm warning at some point today. So just be aware of that. You have a pretty big margin of risk that's just surrounding everything else, where you have a threat for, I would say, just some isolated, strong to severe storms, but mainly just thunderstorms if you're in the dark green marginal risk. All right, today's tornado threat, it's 2% in both slight risk areas. There is it's a limited tornado threat, but there is a tornado threat that is existing today in that 2% green shade. You do have a wind threat, and it's pretty scattered. You have 3 separate areas of 15% wind threats. That's one here in central portions of Nebraska, one here centered around the Chicago area, and then one here all the way up towards the far Great Lakes, far northern sections of Wisconsin and into Minnesota near Duluth. All right, you just got to be aware of that, and we could definitely have some serious wind gusts, and we saw on the radar how we have that wind bag that's starting to form out there. This could definitely become a threat to impacting Chicago. All right, so that's why we have the 15% wind threat there. Then finally, the hail threat. It's pretty broad, 15%. It's in that the main slight risk area for the northern high plains. All right, so that's today's outlook. We go on to tomorrow, the leftovers of this event. It does, regenerate another slight risk. We have another slight risk for the same area. This area has been battered over and over again, and for the 3rd time in a row, we're going to get another slight risk for tomorrow, going up from central sections of Nebraska all the way up into northern Minnesota. We have another slight risk. All right, tomorrow's tornado threat. This doesn't include a 2% tornado threat in the green shade. In the wind department of things, you have a 15% chance of seeing damaging wind gusts in the yellow shade, and then I believe that's a 5%. Yep, that's a 5% in the brownish red shade. Hail threat, 15%. I do think we're going to get some pretty large hailstones that are going to come down somewhere out here in the 15%, perhaps even in the 5% risk area. But yeah, that's tomorrow's outlook. And we go on to day 3. This is Tuesday. We actually have nothing just loaded here. Now we have a slight risk for sections of eastern Minnesota and into western Wisconsin. All right, probabilistically, that's a 15% chance in the slight risk, 5% in the marginal risk. All right, day 4, you don't have anything. Day 5, nothing. Day 6, day 8. So I really do think that once we get through really Tuesday, I think we're going to be okay with severe weather. I think it's going to calm down a lot. The weather's going to get nice. It's going to get a little bit cooler, I think, for some portions of the central United States, but we'll have to see. I think it's just going to be a little bit cooler with severe weather, but definitely we're going to have to kind of shift our attention over to the tropics. So let's break this down with the NAM 3-kilometer model. We're looking at the 12Z. All right, so you can see this is the leftovers of what last night's event looks like, and you can see it's we do have some strong to severe storms moving across portions of Wisconsin here, also into North Dakota. Looks like we could have some big-time hail falling with a possible cell on the NAM. That was around 9 a.m. today. All right, so we'll continue this. Just wanted to see if the 18Z came out, but we'll continue this. And this is 3 p.m. today, so this is pretty much about the time I was filming this video. You can see these storms have really just fallen apart because we don't really have any favorable conditions up here yet. Okay, but we see as we get later in the afternoon and now into the evening, I mean, the only thing we really see today is only a few isolated showers and thunderstorms so far out here in northern Minnesota. So either we're not going to see much today, or we're going to get a very late, potentially overnight threat. But here's your Chicago, signal going off. You can see we do have a little line of storms kind of extending from, the far northern county here into Illinois, all the way down to north central Illinois, and this is kind of just going to sweep its way over to Chicago, and this does end up impacting Chicago with what I would guess is some strong winds. I mean, you can see we have a pretty blockbuster, bow segment here, so this could definitely be producing wind gusts that I could say potentially up to 70 miles per hour. So This is going to be a big deal for Chicago. We may even get a considerable severe thunderstorm warning out of this if this plays out, but the NAM is kind of pointing out a picture that could definitely support some serious wind gusts. And now we do have some storms starting to fire across western Kansas and portions of southwestern Nebraska. And this is 7 p.m. today, Eastern. Here we go. Now Nebraska's event is starting to, really fire up. And we can see as we get into the overnight hours, look at this nasty line of storms moving from the UP of Michigan down all the way through western Wisconsin. This is something to watch out for with damage wind gusts and large hail. Maybe even some embedded tornadoes with this. You can see the more discrete cells behind it definitely could be producing tornadoes. And this actually forms a big line extending all the way from pretty much northern Wisconsin all the way potentially down into northern Kansas, where we have just a train of nasty storms as we get into the overnight hours of tonight into tomorrow. And my goodness, do we just get a huge cluster of storms. Look at this. A huge cluster of storms out here into southern sections of Minnesota, southeastern sections of South Dakota. This is something that you would have to watch out for all hazards. Damage wind gusts, tornadoes, and large hail. I think that these little storms back here, these cells into southern Minnesota and southern Wisconsin, these could definitely have the characteristics to produce tornadoes. This back here does not look good to me. If you're, trying to avoid damage wind gusts and large hail, this is, I think, what's going to produce that. All right, and you also do have a little bow segment moving through northern Kansas. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of different parts here as we get into 2 a.m. Eastern. This finally starts to kind of just fall apart, fizzle out is what I would like to say. We get into tomorrow morning, okay, and we do have a little regeneration of this storm. Here's that second slight risk, and you do have a little event, another damage wind gust event for the same exact area there of Wisconsin. So this area may end up getting battered just over and over again by severe weather, and we're talking about damage wind gusts and large hail. And then the main trough, the main system begins to move in. We finally get that low pressure to pop off right there in between the Nebraska and South Dakota border. Here's some big time storms that would be very severe, producing damage wind gusts and large hail across central Minnesota. I would definitely watch out for that, but some strong to severe storms back into the Dakotas. So I do think that once our main low pressure moves in, which would be Monday into Tuesday, I do think that we're going to start to see more of a eastern shift in where the uptick in severe weather will be. But this finally starts to move apart. And then behind it, the the NAM wants another big line of storms. This bow segment stretching all the way down from southeastern sections of Nebraska all the way up to north central Minnesota. And if this were to play out, we'll have to watch this, but if this were to play out, this would be a bad deal, all right, for areas that are just going to end up getting hit by this if this were to happen. Because remember, these areas at this point would have been hit over and over again by severe weather, including damage and wind gusts. And if we get another potentially even stronger line of storms that would produce damage wind gusts, I mean, that's just spelling trouble for these areas. So definitely an active stretch of severe weather. You can just see as I play through this, it just regenerates cells that continue to pop off here. So I am very concerned about the next few days. Perhaps an enhanced risk. I mean, I think we could definitely get a wind-driven or even a hail-driven enhanced risk sometime in these days. I'm not sure which one because they're equally as intense to me. But what I want to kind of just throw home here is that over the next 3 days, areas are going to get hit over and over again by severe weather, and I do think damage wind gusts is going to be the main problem and just the main issue that we're going to have to talk about. All right, so we're going to talk about this heat wave. All right, we're going to talk about where the heat's going to be and who's going to get the worst of it. So this is as of 8 a.m. this morning. This is what you were waking up to this morning. You had below average temperatures well into the northwestern United States, Pacific Northwest, but you still have above average, well above average temperatures across the Southwest into the Central Plains. Okay. And so this hasn't even gone to the Northeast yet, but we already do have excessive heat watches up, and boom, this thing starts to really explode as this big cold front with well below average temperatures begins to really cool down the western United States and push all this warm air off to the east. And as that happens, the high pressure intensifies, and we'll see an uptick in these temperatures, and we get very intense, centered right around the Great Lakes. This is probably where our high pressure is going to be. and it's just, setting very intense heat all across the Northeast and the Great Lakes. I really do think the Great Lakes, specifically around Michigan and Ohio, is going to be a big problem with the heat. But even the Northeast, we're going to get temperatures that could even get up to 100 degrees. But as we get into by Tuesday, okay, this is early morning hours of Tuesday, it kind of splits. Now we have the entire eastern half, but like the northern sections of the eastern half of the country, if that makes sense, that's where the heat's going to be localized. But you have this big cold front that's continuing to try to push this all off to the east. But because this high pressure is so strong, it's struggling to do that. And that also has to do with the regeneration of severe weather. If this cold front was already, all the way out here, let's say to this line here extending from Wisconsin down to Arkansas or whatever, we wouldn't have the severe weather regenerating over and over again. We wouldn't have these slight risks, but because the heat is barely staying, back over to the upper Midwest, that's why we have the severe weather for over and over again. But basically what I'm saying is that if the cold air was in the place where we're seeing the slight risks, that wouldn't have happened, all right? But that's basically just why we're seeing so much severe weather over and over again. And finally, this does end up pushing the heat out, but still by the 20th, we have intense heat over Maine. My goodness, over 15 degrees above average with our temperatures there before this cool air finally just kind of gives that last push. And now we're kind of slowly but surely going to return back to normal. But it's going to take a long time before we see some average temperatures return to the country. All right, so I'm going to quickly run through this, but we're going to look at the actual temperatures possibly for the eastern United States in the next few days. We see 80s, upper 80s and lower 90s across the board for the entire eastern half of the country. Look at this, 93 degrees, and this is way up into Canada, okay? And that's before even the most intense heat arrives. And look at this, Boston area, 95 degrees. I mean, you could get up, look at this, 97 up here into Maine. We're going to be talking about 100 degrees potentially into New England. All right, so we're talking about just record-shattering heat out here, and I mean this is all across the Northeast. Even in the Southeast, you're still talking about 80s and 90s for your temperatures, and this continues. And just my goodness, I mean look at this, 95 around the city, 96 down here. I mean every spot has the chance definitely to get it at least close to 100. And here we go. 100 degrees out there in the Carolinas, in the Georgia and North Florida. I mean, you're definitely going to get up to 100 degrees sometime. I mean, you can see all of Florida, 100 degrees, and now North Carolina. I mean, it's going to be very intense for a few days. And also the central United States, look at this. Wow, 103 in Oklahoma, 105 out into Colorado. Look at that. That's just not supposed to be there. It's June, guys. We're still supposed to be, warming up. We're already over 100 degrees, which is just bonkers. But yeah, I mean, that's what we're dealing with just because of how strong this heat wave is going to be. So we move over to the Atlantic. All right, we have not looked at this map in a while. It's been a lot of months. I think it's been since the beginning of October since we've last looked at this map. But we are back to the tropics. We do have 2 tropical waves that I am monitoring, as well as the National Hurricane Center. One being here just along the East Florida coast. We do have a new chance of formation. This is a 30% chance in the next 7 days. A trough or an area of low pressure is forecasted to form by midweek a few hundred miles northeast of the central Bahamas. Environmental conditions will be conducive for some development of the system. Thereafter, while it moves westward or northwestward, in the next coming days. All right, so far, this just has a low chance of developing. We'll see what model guidance says, but this is definitely something to watch. The big issue, though, is this. You can see marked in red. We now have a high chance of this developing throughout the next 7 days. A large area of disturbed weather is located over Central America or the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico and the adjacent waters of the northwestern Caribbean Sea. And a broad area of low pressure is forecasted to form the system over the southwestern Gulf of Mexico on Monday or Tuesday. Environmental conditions appear conducive for subsequent gradual development of the low, and a tropical depression or tropical storm could form by midweek while it moves slowly westward or northwestward. Regardless of development, several days of heavy rain are expected across portions of southern Mexico and Central America, and these rains are likely to cause life-threatening flooding and flash flooding. Locally, heavy rainfall is also expected to spread over portions of the northwestern coast of the Gulf of Mexico by the middle of the week. In addition, gale warnings have been issued for portions of the Gulf of Mexico, and more information, blah, blah, blah. So, basically, what we're seeing is just a huge tropical wave that's going to continue to produce tons of tropical moisture, and we are going to see life-threatening flooding out here on the eastern coast of Mexico. I am very concerned about flash flooding, especially also down here in southern Texas. If we see the track move a little bit further north, guys, I mean, southern Texas, the Houston area, a deluge of rain for the next few days straight. I mean, we could definitely be talking about flooding that could be as bad as what we saw in South Florida, okay? And, that's even if the storm doesn't form, okay? And we still have a high chance that this will at least pop off a tropical depression, okay? So this is very concerning right now. This is probably our most concerning piece of weather that we're dealing with, including severe weather. This is just, what our main attention should be on. But, I mean, this is definitely something that will change, and I think that this has a very high chance as well, with a 70% chance in the next 7 days to develop. All right, so we're going to look at model guidance for this. We're going to look at the GFS and see what the GFS is showing as far as any signs of tropical development, in the Atlantic. So this is what we got going on. You can already see we have a ton of moisture and just rainfall that's starting to kind of just, hang around out there in the entire Gulf of Mexico. And then you do have a little bit of moisture that's going to start to kind of just develop the potential storm that we saw on the National Hurricane Center's homepage. But here you go. We start to see a little bit of the circulation out there in Central America. We'll keep this going. And for a second there, you get 1,002 millibar low already into tomorrow. By tomorrow, we could already have a low pressure. That does not mean that we already have a tropical depression. It just means that this storm is beginning to organize. It's somewhat organized. All right. But you see still a lot of tropical moisture, but nothing on the storm on the East Florida coast. But we'll see what happens as we continue into the work week. And we look at the circulation, guys. Look at the circulation out here into the Gulf of Mexico. Look at that. All right, that could definitely be a sign of some possible, gradual development. And boom, you have a 997 millibar low. That looks to me like this could actually end up becoming a tropical depression. This could be a weak or even a strong, perhaps a strong tropical depression already by Wednesday. Okay, this is early morning hours of Wednesday, and look at this. You also do have a now 1,010 millibar low just located just to the north and east of the Bahamas. So things are starting to get active, it looks like, by Wednesday. So I'm going to switch this off to the Western Atlantic so we get a little bit of a closer view. Okay, and we already see tons of heavy rainfall, and this looks like it's going right for Houston. So, I mean, we're still most likely going to get flat life-threatening flash flooding across the eastern coast of Mexico. But, I mean, watch out if you're in southern Texas. I mean, you got to monitor this, okay? And this does end up just throwing a ton of moisture into Texas. It does appear to become a little bit less organized, but, I mean, this is very strong as far as rainfall, and this just throws a ton of rainfall down onto Texas, and this does end up bringing some rainfall into Mexico. But look at this. I mean, even into the desert portions of Texas, we're still seeing extremely heavy rainfall. And if you go back, look at that little circulation right there. Look at that little rotation. Not like tornadoes, but the circulation there. That's a sign of a potential gradual tropical development, and that kind of just slams, or I shouldn't say slam, but it kind of just rides into northern Florida, brings some light impacts with some potentially heavy rainfall. All right, but you gotta watch out if you're in Texas. All across the southern half of Texas, you need to watch out for flash flooding, because a lot of this area hasn't seen much rain in the past few days. And if you're looking for that one storm that's going to bring it, this is going to be the storm. Okay, but this is by Friday. We still have a ton of tropical. Look at all this tropical moisture just moving its way all the way up into Mexico and to southern Texas. This is going to be a big issue for the next week, and we do get another area of circulation. I mean, we're getting pretty far out, but still by Sunday of next week, we still have a broad area of circulation that tries to do something, and it brings even more tropical rainfall into the Gulf Coast. All right, so I mean, just looking at that, you can see how dangerous this upcoming week could be. And if we look, I'm just going to take a brief look at, if you look at the total accumulated precipitation, okay, this is out to Sunday, so this is a week from now. We go out a week from now. You see these yellow shades? I mean, this is over a foot of rainfall. We're talking about potentially over a foot of rainfall in the next week for areas of southern Texas, even into the desert. I mean, you're still talking about 4.5, 5, potentially even 6 inches of rain. Okay, so this is going to be a huge issue for areas up here, and we need to continue to monitor this. But you can see the track of all the tropical moisture coming all the way down from like the central Caribbean, all the way up through eastern Mexico, all the way up into southern Texas. So Texas needs to be aware of potentially life-threatening flooding in the next couple of days. All right. So now we figure out just where exactly and why, where this thing's going to go and why it's going to go there. Okay, so starting out what we had this morning is this pretty big area of high pressure, what we call a ridge, that's building over the eastern United States. That's going to force any storm that forms here, or any just area of low pressure, it's going to force it down south, because they want to avoid the high pressure. Low pressure avoids high pressure. Okay, but look at all this just, balanced atmospheric pressure out here all across the the Southern Atlantic. This is what tropical systems love. They love all this stuff. They will just move anywhere they want when you see this. And here you go. You get your low pressure that starts to form out here, and it starts to bring that tropical moisture. And as it does that, this high pressure expands, because this is our heat wave. It expands across the eastern United States, forcing this to move south. That's why it could definitely move into Mexico, or if this kind of hangs up a little bit further north, that could allow this to move north, and then this goes into Texas, and you get more rain in Texas. That's how things are going to be working. And we see this move a little bit further south, so it does bring more of the low pressure into, the kind of riding across the Texas and Mexico border. That could definitely be a situation that we deal with. And you can see this little area of low pressure that we saw marked by the National Hurricane Center. This is going to have a little bit of a hard time to move through. It's going to struggle because of how intense this high pressure and this ridging is going to be. It's going to force it down south. But the only reason why this has at least a small chance of developing is because there's limited wind shear, and the pressure is so balanced that this can really move anywhere except northward, because there's so much ridging going on north of it. But out in the Atlantic, across the waters, you're fine as long as you stay away from all this high pressure ridging, which storms do not like. And this kind of just tears it apart, because this does end up moving southward. So I think maybe by the end of this week into the beginning of next week, I think what we'll see Texas getting a break from the rain, and we may see all this tropical moisture just get thrown into central Mexico, maybe southern Mexico perhaps, instead of southern Texas. So that might be our saving grace, but this is what just the 500 millibar height anomalies looks like off the GFS, and this could change. But I do like this run, and I think it's a pretty solid run of the GFS. So yeah, I mean, that's basically the driving factor of this storm. And finally, we're going to look at the GFS ensembles here, just looking at our possible low-pressure tracks, showing where all the ensemble runs are showing it. I also like to call this the spaghetti model, all right? But this is the GFS ensemble, so it's all the ensemble runs of the GFS model kind of put into one model run. And so we take this out, and you can see all the signals for this low pressure really starts to kind of just move up towards Texas. We see where it takes that. And most of the members take the south of Texas, but remember, this is where the central low pressure is going to be. So you're still going to get very intense rainfall on this southern half of Texas. Okay, so I mean, this track would still definitely support tons of rainfall into Texas, but I would say maybe a little bit more into Mexico. But remember, the northern side of the storm is going to have more rainfall packed into it. So if you get a shielded rain on the north side with low pressure kind of hanging around the Texas border, that means you're going to get more rainfall into Texas, which is farther north of the low pressure. You also do have a few members showing the signal for that low pressure moving towards Florida, perhaps getting down to about 1,000 millibars. I mean, that's definitely possible, all right? So definitely a solid run of the GFS ensembles here. And you can see we have just a ton of members that are really putting out a strong signal for just a lot of different areas of low pressure with all that tropical moisture moving up towards Texas, all right? So that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for coming to watch. I'll see you guys in the next video. So I really apologize for not uploading in the past few days. I've been dealing with finals. It's been so crazy, just very busy. Alright, but I really do appreciate all of you guys that did stick with me and have still subscribed to the channel. Okay, I will be returning back to a very good schedule because obviously now I am on summer break, alright? So I'll definitely be able to get back to uploading very frequently, just how my banner does on my channel. That's how it says. And I definitely will be uploading frequently, and I'll give you guys updates on the tropics and severe weather. So please consider subscribing, leave a like down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.